On November 9, 2025, at 4:17 local time in the Caribbean Sea, about 14 nautical miles northwest of La Guaira, Venezuela, the night was almost completely black. Seacom and the USS Gravely were operating in a position fully permitted under international law. Then, 3 Venezuelan patrol boats decided to challenge that reality with a Chinese-built anti-ship missile. The mistake was immediate, and the result unfolded in fire and smoke across 4 square kilometers of open water. Because when you launch an attack on an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer equipped with the Aegis combat system, you are not beginning a standoff. You are bringing your own fleet to the edge in less than 4 minutes. If you want to see how $42 million worth of Venezuelan naval hardware learned that lesson the hard way, make sure to subscribe now. This escalates quickly. The USS Gravely had been monitoring the 3 contacts for 17 minutes. It was standard procedure under Operation Sentinel South, the ongoing U.S. counter-narcotics mission that had been putting growing pressure on Caracas for weeks. Just 4 days earlier, Navy helicopters had intercepted 2 speedboats transporting weapons toward Curaçao. One was sunk after it ignored repeated warnings. Venezuela called it aggression. The Pentagon called it enforcement. Now, the Venezuelan Navy was answering back with 3 Constitution-class fast attack craft closing in at 28 knots. Sierra 123, Sierra 124, and Sierra 125 advanced in a loose formation from the southwest. On the Gravely's bridge, Captain James Richardson studied the tactical display with the kind of calm that only comes from knowing you are aboard 5,500 tons of steel built for exactly this kind of moment. The destroyer's SPY-1D phased array radar tracked every movement. The Aegis combat system had already generated firing solutions for all 3 boats in case the situation turned. At 4:17 and 12 seconds, Sierra 123 made the first move. A C-701 anti-ship missile, a Chinese export model worth around $1.2 million, launched from the patrol boat's forward deck in a bright flash that cut through the pre-dawn darkness. The missile accelerated toward the Gravely at Mach 0.9, with an estimated impact time of 2 minutes and 30 seconds. It never came close. Inside the Gravely's Combat Information Center, the response was not panic. It was precision. The SPY-1D radar identified the launch plume instantly. Surface-to-surface missile inbound, bearing 243, range 9.1 nautical miles. The Aegis system locked on before the first alarm had fully registered. The SM-2 standard missile battery acquired the target in 0.7 seconds. The firing solution was transmitted in another 0.3 seconds. At 4:17 and 19 seconds, only 7 seconds after the Venezuelan launch, the Gravely answered. The SM-2 shot upward at Mach 3.5, leaving a white trail across the dark sky. At roughly $2 million per missile, it was expensive, but unlike the incoming weapon, this one connected. The intercept took place at 6,000 meters altitude. The C-701 broke apart into burning fragments that rained across 4 square kilometers of sea. Total flight time for the attacking missile, 11 seconds. Total cost to Venezuela, $1.2 million turned into smoke and debris. The Gravely's executive officer came over the tactical net, voice steady and controlled. All stations, weapons free. Engage all hostile contacts. At that point, this was no longer a patrol. It was combat. The 3 Venezuelan patrol boats split formation immediately. Sierra 123 held its course. Sierra 124 broke north at 32 knots. Sierra 125 turned sharply east, trying to close the distance. It was classic fast boat harassment doctrine, the kind designed to pressure slow commercial traffic. But they had overlooked one decisive fact. The USS Gravely was not a merchant vessel. It was a warship designed to defeat layered missile threats from major adversaries. 3 aluminum patrol boats were not a layered assault. They were targets. The 5-inch, 62 caliber, Mark 45 gun rotated smoothly towards Sierra 123. Range, 8.6 nautical miles. The fire control radar locked on. At 4:18, the Gravely fired 3 rounds in rapid sequence. Each 70-pound shell traveled at Mach 2.5. The first round struck Sierra 123 directly amidships. The blast tore through the patrol boat's aluminum hull as if it were paper. 3 seconds later, the second round struck, triggering the remaining fuel tanks. Around 40,000 liters of diesel ignited at once, sending a fireball nearly 200 meters into the early morning sky. By the time the third round landed, it no longer mattered. Sierra 123 was already coming apart. From the first shot to total destruction, only 18 seconds passed. Estimated losses stood at 17 dead and 4 wounded. The patrol boat had cost about $12 million to build. The 3 shells that ended it cost roughly $9,000. Sierra 124 tried to break north at full power, engine screaming as its speed climbed to 34 knots. The crew sent a frantic transmission back to Caracas. Contact, under fire, requesting immediate... The message ended before it was finished. Above the fight, an MH-60R Seahawk callsign Razor 21 had been circling at 3,000 meters. Its crew received the order immediately. Weapons free, engage Sierra 124. The helicopter dropped to attack altitude, and an AGM-114 Hellfire locked onto the fleeing patrol boat's heat signature. Launch cleared. Fire. The missile left the rail at 4:19. It crossed 3.2 kilometers in just 14 seconds. Its shaped-charged warhead hit the patrol boat's engine compartment and detonated with overwhelming force. The blast split the vessel in two. The bow kept moving for another 20 meters before rolling over. The stern went down almost immediately. 8 survivors were seen in the water. 11 were confirmed dead. The Hellfire cost about $170,000. The patrol boat it destroyed was valued at roughly $14 million. Sierra 125 then made the most costly decision of the battle. Instead of pulling away, it charged straight at Gravely's starboard side. The gap closed fast. 4.7 nautical miles, 4.2, 3.9. On the bridge, the officer made the recommendation, hostile contact accelerating on an intercept course, advise immediate engagement. Captain Richardson responded without hesitation. Engage with CIWS. The Phalanx close-in weapon system came alive with its unmistakable high-pitched whine. Its 6-barreled 20mm Gatling gun spun up to full speed, 4,500 rounds per minute. Radar locked onto the approaching patrol boat with exact precision. At 2.1 nautical miles, the CIWS opened fire. It did not sound like individual shots. It sounded like one continuous roar. A stream of tungsten rounds tore through the humid air at 3,800 feet per second. The first burst lasted 3 seconds, around 400 rounds. It ripped apart Sierra 125's superstructure almost instantly. The bridge collapsed. The radio mast toppled. The forward gun mount was torn free and thrown into the sea. The boat's momentum carried it ahead for another 30 seconds, but the hull was already taking on water through more than 200 holes. At 4:21, Sierra 125 rolled onto its side and began sinking bow first. 6 survivors were visible abandoning ship. 14 were confirmed dead. The ammunition used by the CIWS cost about $22,000. The patrol boat, carrying roughly $16 million in construction and equipment, was now at the bottom. From the first missile launch to the destruction of all 3 Venezuelan vessels, the entire clash lasted 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Not a single Venezuelan round hit the Gravely. Not one American sailor was injured. The destroyer's damage control teams were never even needed. At 4:23, Gravely transmitted a priority flash report to U.S. Southern Command. 3 Venezuelan patrol boats had engaged a U.S. warship in international waters with anti-ship missiles. All hostile vessels destroyed. 23 survivors recovered. Immediate diplomatic notification requested. Then Captain Richardson made the decision that would shape everything that followed. Launch rescue operations. Recover all survivors. It was not compassion alone. It was also a signal. You fired first, you lost, and now you will live to tell the story. 2 rigid-hull inflatable boats launched from Gravely at 4:26. Within 40 minutes, all 23 Venezuelan survivors were aboard the destroyer. They were treated for burns, shrapnel injuries, and shock while armed sailors kept watch. Every statement was recorded. Every wound was photographed. One American corpsman pulled a Venezuelan sailor from the water. His uniform was scorched, his face dark with soot. He looked up and said nothing. There was nothing left to say. By 6 o'clock, the Caribbean sun rose over open water. 3 oil slicks were the only signs that the patrol boats had ever been there. The USS Gravely resumed its course. Same heading, same speed, mission continuing. At 7:30, Venezuela's Ministry of Defense released its first official statement. According to Caracas, the patrol boats had been carrying out routine defensive operations when they were allegedly attacked without provocation by a U.S. warship. The ministry called for an international investigation, but the wording was carefully crafted to blur the one detail that mattered most. Venezuela had fired first. 2 hours later, the Pentagon answered, and the response left little room for interpretation. There was no soft language, no careful diplomatic cushioning, only a direct account supported by radar records. Venezuelan naval vessels had launched an anti-ship missile at the USS Gravely while it was operating in international waters. The Gravely responded in self-defense under international law. Every radar track had been preserved, every second was documented. The launch, the intercept, the return fire, and the final outcome were all captured in detail. What the data showed was simple. Venezuela had started a confrontation it had no realistic way to control, and it was over in less than 4 minutes. The numbers made the outcome even harder to ignore. Venezuela lost 3 patrol boats with a combined value of around $42 million, along with years of training, readiness, and operational capability. The USS Gravely, by comparison, used 2 standard missiles, 3 5-inch rounds, 1 Hellfire, and around 400 CIWS rounds, for a total cost of about $2.4 million. The exchange ratio came out to roughly 17-1. Later intelligence assessments suggested the incident had not been improvised in the moment. Venezuelan Naval Command had reportedly approved a harassment mission intended to challenge the United States and score a symbolic political point. The plan was to fire a single missile across Gravely's bow as a so-called warning shot, a staged act of defiance meant to send a message without triggering full retaliation. That idea collapsed on contact with reality. You do not fire a warning shot at a warship equipped with the Aegis combat system and expect symbolism to matter. Aegis does not interpret gestures. It detects threats, calculates solutions, and responds. By November 10th, maritime analysts from Miami to Buenos Aires were already drawing the same conclusion. Venezuela's Navy had tested American resolve and found it was absolute. The USS Gravely did not rush to escalate. It responded within the rules of engagement, with force that was measured, immediate, and decisive. The patrol boats fired first and they missed. The destroyer answered and it did not. The message was impossible to miss. When a vessel built to survive and defeat complex missile attacks faces a small fast attack force, the gap in capability becomes brutally clear. Against a warship like Gravely, those patrol boats were never operating on equal terms. Once the line was crossed, the result was almost predetermined. And that is what made the encounter so significant. This was not only about 3 lost vessels. It was about what every regional navy understood after the fact. From the Caribbean to the southern tip of the continent, commanders now had a vivid example of what happens when harassment turns into open hostility against a modern destroyer. The response is not theoretical. It is immediate, calculated, and delivered faster than most crews can react. Venezuela absorbed that lesson in 3 minutes and 47 seconds. The 23 survivors would carry that account forward, better than any press release ever could. Somewhere inside a Pentagon briefing room, the entire event could probably be reduced to one cold conclusion. Courage alone is not enough, and imported missiles are not a substitute for preparation, precision, and systems built for this exact fight. A destroyer does not rely on luck. It relies on radar, discipline, engineering, and a crew trained again and again for the moment when theory becomes real. In the end, asymmetric warfare only works when the smaller force brings a real advantage to the fight. Venezuela entered as the smaller force without that advantage. The difference in technology, training, and judgment decided the outcome long before the first missile ever left the rail. The Caribbean kept the evidence. If this breakdown held your attention and you want more analysis of modern naval confrontations, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on notifications so you do not miss the next video.